I'm 82 years old, and most of the person people thanked all my life never really knew me. I don't say that with anger. It's just a quiet fact I've been sitting with these past few years. When you get to this age, you start noticing the difference between the life you lived and the life you meant to live. They aren't always the same. Sometimes they barely touch. I spent 50 years trying to be what everyone else needed. A good son, a reliable employee, a supportive husband, a dependable friend. I became very good at those roles. People trusted me. They leaned on me. They called me solid. But somewhere along the way, I stopped asking myself what I wanted. Not once or twice. For decades. I'm not telling this because I want sympathy. At this point, sympathy is useless. I'm telling it because time is thin now. When time is thin, truth gets easier to speak. In my 20s, pleasing people didn't feel like sacrifice. It felt like responsibility. My father worked long hours and rarely complained, so I learned early that duty was something you carried quietly. My mother used to say, if people are happy with you, life will be easier. That stayed with me, so I became agreeable. At work, I said yes to extra shifts, even when I was exhausted. When my boss hinted that I should stay late, I stayed. When he asked if I could handle more, I nodded before he finished the sentence. It earned me praise. Small raises. A reputation for reliability. I thought that reputation was the same thing as respect. It isn't, but I didn't know that then. In relationships, I was the same. If my friends chose the restaurant, I went there. If my partner wanted to move cities, I packed boxes. I told myself flexibility was maturity. And sometimes it was, but not always. There were small moments when I felt a pull in another direction. A job offer I wanted but declined because it meant disappointing my manager. A weekend trip I cancelled because a relative needed help reorganizing a garage. An evening I wanted to spend alone but attended a dinner anyway because someone counted on me. Each decision was tiny, harmless, reasonable. That's how it happens. Nothing dramatic, no big mistake you can point to, just a steady leaning away from yourself. In my 30s and 40s, life became busy in the ordinary way. Marriage, bills, promotions that sounded impressive but mostly meant more hours. I was always in motion, always needed somewhere. My calendar filled itself without me noticing. People appreciated me. They really did. I don't want to rewrite history and pretend they didn't. My wife once asked me gently, "What do you actually want this weekend?" I laughed and said, "Whatever you want is fine." She smiled, but I remember a flicker in her eyes. I didn't understand it then. I think now it was disappointment. Not because I agreed with her, but because she couldn't find me in the answer. Years passed like that. Efficient, responsible, predictable. I built a life that looked respectable from the outside. And it was respectable. I'm not ashamed of it. I provided, I helped, I showed up. But I rarely arrived as myself. I arrived as what was needed. The turning point wasn't loud. It was a hospital room. White walls, the smell of disinfectant. My older brother lying in bed after a sudden stroke. He had always been the stubborn one, the one who did what he wanted without asking permission. We used to joke that he was reckless. He couldn't speak clearly anymore. His words came out slow, broken, but he grabbed my hand with surprising strength and said something I'll never forget. I'm glad I didn't wait. It took me a moment to understand. He meant his trips, his hobbies, the risks he took that I had quietly judged. He meant the life he allowed himself to live without constant approval. He passed away 3 weeks later. At his funeral, people told stories about him. Some were messy, some were imperfect, but they were his. They were full of color. I realized most of the stories people would tell about me would involve how helpful I was, how reliable, how I could always be counted on. Those are kind things to say, but they are thin, if that's all there is. That was the first time I felt the weight of the years behind me. Not fear, exactly. More like a door closing softly in another room. Even then, I didn't change quickly. Habits built over 50 years don't dissolve overnight. I still said yes more than I meant to. I still chose convenience over honesty. But the awareness stayed with me like a quiet ache. Then retirement came. Everyone congratulated me. They said, "Now you can finally do what you want." It sounded generous. It also sounded strange because I wasn't sure what that was. When your identity has been built around meeting expectations, removing those expectations leaves a hollow space. The first few months felt like standing in an empty house after moving out the furniture. Echoes everywhere. I tried to pick up old interests, but some of them no longer fit. Friends I had neglected had built full lives without me. My wife and I cared for each other, but there were years of unspoken things between us, like unopened letters stacked in a drawer. The hardest realization wasn't that I had worked too much or helped too often. It was that I had been absent from my own decisions. I had outsourced my direction to other people's comfort. You can't reclaim decades. You can only look at them. There are things that can't be fixed now, conversations I never had with my parents before they died. Places I wanted to see with my brother. Versions of myself that never had the chance to exist because I kept choosing the safer answer. Time doesn't refund what you didn't use. It just moves forward. I'm not miserable. I want to be clear about that. My life wasn't a tragedy. It was ordinary, and ordinary can still carry regret. The two aren't opposites. These days, I sit by the window in the mornings with a cup of tea. The street is quieter than it used to be. Sometimes I try to imagine meeting my younger self. I don't scold him. He wasn't foolish. He was trying to be good. He believed approval was the same as belonging. I would only tell him one thing. Don't disappear while you're helping. If you're listening to this and you're younger than I am, I'm not asking you to rebel or ignore responsibilities. Life needs responsibility. Other people matter. Kindness matters. But you matter too. And it's easy to forget that if you keep proving your worth by how useful you are. I used to think being needed was the highest form of love. Now I think being known is. And you can't be known if you keep editing yourself to fit the room. There will always be someone who wants more from you. More time. More effort, more agreement. If you give all of it without checking in with yourself, one day you may look around and realize you are a collection of other people's expectations. I don't say this with urgency or alarm, just calm honesty. Life is long, and then it isn't. If any of this sounds familiar, you don't need to make grand changes. Just notice the small moments where your own voice goes quiet. Notice how often you say it's fine when it isn't. Those moments add up. They shape years. I wish I had understood that sooner. Not to become selfish, but to remain present in my own life while caring for others. It's possible. I simply leaned too far in one direction for too long. Now, at 82, I have fewer years ahead than behind. That doesn't frighten me the way it once did. What I feel more often is a gentle sadness for the parts of me that never got introduced to the world. Still, there is some peace in telling the truth, even late. Especially late. If this meant something to you, you can sit with it for a while. You don't have to do anything immediately. Sometimes just noticing is enough to begin. As for me, I spend my days a little differently now. I say no more often. I play the guitar again, even if my fingers are stiff. I let people see when I'm tired or uncertain. It doesn't rewrite the past, but it makes the present feel more like mine. The years I lost to pleasing everyone are gone. I've accepted that. Acceptance isn't happiness. As myself, I would, without hesitation. But life doesn't offer exchanges like that. So I sit here, an old man with a long history of saying yes, finally learning the shape of his own no. It's late, but at least now, when the room is quiet, I recognize the person sitting in it. Subscribe and like.